Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one, yet again, based on one of your newer suggestions. All of these have been based on new suggestions so far, so who knows, I may end up finishing the 10 videos or so with just new suggestions. And when I saw the name associated with this entry, I thought to myself, surely it has to do with a lumberjack cryptid. And sure enough, when I saw the information on it, it is indeed tied to one of my most favorite subjects. So thank you so much for the suggestion. Let's go ahead and let's talk about it here. It has to do with a very peculiar creature that definitely stands out as one of those mythical creatures that I've talked about in my lumberjack tales. By the way, I created a playlist dedicated just to these lumberjack cryptids. So check it out if you haven't a chance. Just click on the channel and then you'll find the option for playlist, and when you do, you'll see one that I dedicated there for all my videos exclusively just under the lumberjack cryptids. But it's known as this. It's known as the Whirling Whimpus. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the unique and fascinating info associated with this yet another entry in my lumberjack cryptids. So what is this Whirling Whimpus? Well, when you hear parts of the information on it, it'll immediately remind you of a very famous Warner Brothers character, and you know exactly what I mean here in a minute. But for starters, this is a Sasquatch-like creature that is found somewhere apparently in the North American woods. Specifically, if you go to Tennessee, that's where you'll start finding this creature there. And like most other lumberjack cryptids, it's been around pretty much ever since the US or America was explored during the North American folklore age, like the age involving expanding westward, lots of new frontiers, finding new habitats for the first time, and then coming across this. So if you go into the forest mountains there of Tennessee, and today you'll have a chance of encountering this creature. But back then, there were enough specific encounters to have like a lasting impact. Like people actually talked about him from one another to other people, and they basically denoted all the same characteristics. So those characteristics have to do with this. This creature is apparently 7 feet tall. It kind of looks like a mixture between, like I said, a Bigfoot, but more along the lines of a gorilla or some kind of large monkey. So kind of like a mishmash of those two. Definitely the top party, especially the face itself, seems to be more along those lines too. 7 feet tall seems to be its measurement. Not exactly a small creature, although other ones or other iterations that you'll see here also point to it being smaller, at least than 7 feet tall. It does have a squat, fat-like body. So this is definitely a creature that has girth, it has mass associated with it, and in some parts of its body it's covered with fur, other parts it's scarcely covered, and it seems like the bottom parts in fact seems to be the ones that have hardly any kind of legs, I'm sorry, any kind of fur on it, especially on its legs. Interestingly enough, its legs are probably its weakest point because they seem to be the shortest appendages within the entire creature, and they seem to be very thin. So remember, this thing is very squat, very powerful, has a stocky build on top, but on the bottom practically nothing, almost like emaciated, like just tiny twig-like legs, if you will, that cover the bottom portion of it. And these legs, I mean, it's just almost no fur associated with them either, probably known more on the lines of stubby legs, if you will. But this thing, whatever it has down on the legs in terms of power, like let's say missing power, it definitely makes up for it with its arms. It has these gigantic arms, very, very large compared to the rest of its body. Its hands even more so, and most of its build, most of its stock body seems to be made up within these arms too. So, and lastly, in other iterations, it seems like at the bottom of its feet, rather than let's say having traditional feet like let's say a gorilla would have, no, it seems like in some cases it seems to have hooves on there as well. So very interesting in that regard, but that seems to be more along the rarer side. Other characteristics seems to be its appetite. Unfortunately, for all those people that were moving westward during the frontier days, this was a creature that would hunt them down for food. It ate humans, so not necessarily a good thing to come across this creature. In fact, it's pretty much has a ferocious appetite, and its delicacy seems to be people pretty much. Like it probably feeds on other animals around the forest too, but it definitely uses humans as its main course. And so it's been blamed with the disappearance of many woodsmen out there in the forest. So even back in those days, whenever people were suddenly gone, like they haven't been seen in a while, these things were blamed for their disappearance. And how they hunted humans came to this very unique trait. Remember, I was mentioning earlier how it'll remind you of a certain Warner Brothers cartoon character. Well, here it is. So those giant arms that it has, it can apparently begin spinning them at a very quick speed. So much so that its entire body almost starts spinning as well. It spins faster and faster until it becomes a whirling, I don't know if it could be like a tornado, but it's something where it's more on the lines of a whirling object that becomes invisible. And at that point, the only thing you would know that it's there, it seems to be this drone-like buzzing, like this buzzing sound, like you would imagine today in terms of today's drones. If you hear one, you know exactly what it sounds like. Imagine something like this, but in those forests, well before, of course, the existence of any drones. This thing was making those specific noises. And in fact, I'll point out here, you'll see, like, for example, like what I mean. Doesn't this remind you of the Tasmanian devil? The way that that thing was able to spin and then create that tiny tornado, kind of like you see here in this iteration. Such was the case here. In fact, apparently someone clocked it. It was able to spin at 2,150 rounds per minute, which is absolutely fast. So either way, though, if something is spinning so fast that it becomes practically invisible, then you know that it's definitely going to be really fast. And it uses this to both camouflage itself, creep up essentially on somebody unsuspecting, not knowing essentially that that sound is this whirling wumpus. And then finally, when it reaches its prey, it'll attack it with that speed, with that force. And so great is this force that whenever it happens, it turns that prey into basically like one giant gloop. Like it's everything. Like this whirling speed isn't just him spinning. Like, no, this whirling wumpus actually has its fist, its gigantic fist, like I mentioned earlier, those giant hands pounding hundreds and hundreds of times each, probably within a couple of seconds. So it turns the entire prey into one big blob of mass. Like so powerful, so quick are those strikes that it just turns them into putty, into paste, if you will. So that's essentially what this creature has, the terror that it can evoke. Because imagine you're with your buddies out there in the forest, you hear that drone-like sound, you see something like a blur, and then all of a sudden the buddy that you had next to you is nothing but a mass of blob just suddenly hit the ground, like of blood, of bones, everything just down there on the ground itself. So quite fear-inducing if you were to come across this creature or run into its habitat and see that happening to others. Not much hope, it seems like, whenever you come across this creature, other than having that telltale sign of that drone-like noise. That seems to be its only weakness in terms of its prey. Kind of like the shark, of course, has the infamous like the fin on top of its body, announcing its presence, such as the case with this creature. But that's pretty much it. No other information really associated to it. No other more recent encounters. I was trying to see if there was something more specific, like let's say a name, a person that was missing, maybe even like a eyewitness account, but it doesn't seem to be a case. Such as with all the other, in this case, lumberjack tales, these cryptids all have this mysterious aura surrounding them. Like people see them, they just can't have any specific names, like in terms of the people that saw them or the locations, to be even more specific. So whether this thing is still out there somewhere in the woods here in North America, or in this case in Tennessee, it remains to be seen, but it hasn't been sighted for quite some time, at least from the frontier days. So, but what do you guys think? The whirling wumpus, definitely something that is a creature not to be encountered and to be feared outright. if you go across the woods and come across, in this case, that mysterious drone-like sound. Also, with regards to this cryptid, I'm wondering if it has any other presence, let's say, throughout other parts of the world. Doesn't seem like it. Don't like all the other cryptids, the lumberjack tails. They seem to fall under here, under the North American side. So, but if anybody has any more info, something else I might have missed, please post those comments below. One last things too about this cryptid, it does have an enemy. If you will, it happens to be bears. So bears are obviously one of the top alpha predators there within your natural woods or your natural forest. So such is the case here. This cryptid almost has like it's a delicacy to bears. So bears definitely attack it, and then it in turn probably attack bears too. So who knows how the bear is able to sneak up on this thing, considering how quickly it can move. But somewhere along the way, it seems like bears have made this thing one of its own delicacies. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.